used to make electricity for Great Britain. The Withering Ghost Towns of the North by Zachariah Reed. Alright guys, here we go. Alright, Margaret Thatcher, the root of all the problems in the North. What was life like living in a community ravaged by Thatcher's economic policies? Well, in northern villages such as Orgreave and Grimethorpe during the miners' strike, life was difficult for those on strike and fearful for those who continued to work in the mines. Due to the strikes of coal mine workers in towns where coal mining was still in practice, those who chose to continue working during this time would be picketed by angry mobs when their boss would allow them to enter work, since they made the strike less effective. So basically what this meant was that the people who would work when everyone else was striking would really ruin it for the strikers, because it gave them a lot less for them to use against That was weird. I cut out for a second. Anyway, sorry about my Wi-Fi. I'll go back to it. Okay. In communities such as Grimethorpe and Orgreave, people were very familiar with one another. This was due to the housing being close together and a lot of men having the same job, which was mining, obviously. During the time of miners' strikes in 1984, people would see it as a time to look out for their neighbour more than ever. The common goal The common goal of keeping their jobs meant that they grew closer as a community. It meant that they could all relate to one another on the basis that Margaret Thatcher was a terrible Prime Minister. As well as relationships being forged and strengthened, many were blown apart. This was especially the case when an individual would refuse to strike, whilst others carried on in their efforts. Friendships would be destroyed between the ones striking and the ones continuing to work, because those who worked completely undermined the strike and made it almost redundant. And a fun fact about that, they also got an increased... Hey!
Who are you? Why do you look exactly like me?
I'm you from the future. I'm here to tell you that you failed this presentation!
What?
Yeah! You keep referencing video games. No research.
Yeah, but it's a pass, right?
It's not a pass, you idiot. Just get it done, come on.
It's like padded out the rod. Undertale references for like 6 minutes.
Yes, it is.
The whole thing, and that's why I failed the presentation.
Obviously, you got no research in there. It's just references to the dumb video game. You twit.
But it's so great. It's Undertale.
I don't care that it's Undertale. It's not going to get you a passing grade. Do the work. Put the work in. Do the research.
Fine.
Good.
One eternity later.
What was life like for those who continued coal mining? Well, during the miners' strike of 1984, people in the mining towns which contained pits, which were destined to be shut, still had men working in them. These men were hated by those on strike because it made the strike less effective, as the coal they mined was still used to make electricity for Great Britain. This would benefit Margaret Thatcher's plans of closing the pits over the course of the next few years. The people who continued to work were paid increased wages, which made betraying the strike even more enticing. In summary, on one hand, they could continue to make money and provide for themselves and their families, but on the other hand, they were shunned by the community and were vulnerable to attack by enraged strikers. What was life like for those on strike? For those on strike, life was hard to say the least, as most had no source of income besides that which was being lent by their friends and family. Many people could not afford basic things such as heating and food. This had a rippling effect, since there was no source of income for these miners. They could not afford to do things such as go to the bakery for bread, or fish and chip shop for cod, or the grocer's for vegetables. Due to the lack of customer, shop owners could not afford to keep going and were forced to close. This made their high streets barren and depressing. What was life like for children? Children of those on strike would be at higher risk of physical and verbal abuse due to the high amounts of stress for those on strike. Oftentimes, they would go to bed hungry because their caregiver could not provide. Many were upset that the mining industry was at risk, since the job often gets carried on through the generations of families. One film which shows this well is Billy Elliot, as it depicts a young boy living in a northern town during the strike, whose father is struggling to stay on strike and provide for his family. In one such scene, he loses his temper and aggressively pins Billy Elliot up against a wall.
I hate you! You're a bastard! Get off!
What was life like for the police force? The tension between the strikers and the police force were high. The police would line up outside where the buses would leave to collect those who continued to work. People who continued to work in the mines were known as scabs. The police were also called to arrest strikers, since oftentimes it was an illegal strike, as people from other towns would collect in one specific place to protest, such as Orgreave. The picture on the right depicts a police officer on horseback about to strike a striker at the Battle of Orgreave. The Battle of Orgreave. This battle was a terrible conflict between the South Yorkshire Police and the strikers. It happened on the 18th of June 1984. It involved 93 arrests and the injuries of 123 people. Around 59% of those injured were officers, with the remaining 41% of injuries belonging to the picketers. For police brutality, false arrests and wrongful detention, in June 1991, 39 picketers received £425,000 in compensation from the South Yorkshire Police. This shows how people were living in a time where the police force and the public around the northern area were on completely opposite sides and extremely divided. How does this link to Road? Road could possibly be a ghost town, as the only things to do are to go to the pub or eat chips. There is no mention of other businesses or the characters engaging in places besides these. This helps to show how poor northern towns were due to Margaret Thatcher's policies. Incidents such as the Battle of Orgreave can also link to Road. Characters such as Skinlad, who is most likely homeless, therefore would have nothing better to do,
would likely have been involved if they had the opportunity, especially as he was seen to be an aggressive character, as he states. And you've got to be fit to fight, and I do, every Saturday night with my friends, at weekend, fight. In conclusion, I believe Roe to be situated in a ghost town, suffering from Thatcher's economic policies, which caused the miners' strike.